Welcome to The Explainer. So today we're going to talk about one of the most misunderstood ideas out there, originality. Where does it actually come from? Is it some kind of lightning strike of pure genius, or is it something else entirely?
All right, let's jump right in with a quote I'm sure you've heard a million times, usually attached to the legendary Pablo Picasso. It's one of those phrases, right? It sounds a little shocking, but it also feels kinda true. It suggests that the biggest creative leaps involve some form of clever theft.
But here's the kicker. There is zero evidence that Picasso ever actually said this. And the story of the quote itself, well, it's the perfect example of what we're talking about today. See, that idea wasn't created from nothing. It was inherited, it was polished, and it was passed on.
I mean, just look at this journey. The core idea gets passed down and tweaked for more than 100 years. It starts as a comment about poets in 1892, then gets sharpened by T.S. Eliot, jumps over to the world of music with Stravinsky, and then finally gets launched into pop culture by Steve Jobs. Each person put their own spin on it before passing it along.
So how does a catchy little phrase like that become a really deep artistic principle? Well, for that, we have to turn to the poet T.S. Eliot, who gave us one of the most important versions of that quote.
Eliot's whole argument was that to create something truly new, an artist first needs what he called a consciousness of the past. Basically, it means you have to get to know, and I mean really know, the work of everyone who came before you. You have to see your own work not as some isolated thing, but as the next link in a very, very long chain.
So here's the really crucial part. New art doesn't just borrow from old art. It actually starts a conversation with it. And when a truly new, groundbreaking work shows up, it changes how we see everything that came before it. It kind of reshuffles the whole deck and makes us see the old masters in a totally new light. And you know, this isn't just some stuffy literary theory. It's a fundamental pattern, a kind of universal blueprint for creativity that you can see across all of human culture. And this lays it out perfectly. I mean, think about it. James Joyce's Ulysses is a modern-day retelling of Homer's ancient epic. Mary Shelley's Frankenstein is in a deep conversation with Milton's Paradise Lost. And let's be real, you just can't imagine A Song of Ice and Fire existing without The Lord of the Rings paving the way.
You see the exact same pattern in music. Hip-hop was literally born from DJs looping instrumental breaks from old funk and soul records. Bands like Led Zeppelin took the raw power and structure of old blues songs and cranked it up to 11. Even a massive hit like Daft Punk's One More Time is built by brilliantly slicing up pieces of an old disco track.
And in movies? Oh yeah, it's everywhere. Countless stories that you know and love, from the original Star Wars to The Matrix to The Lion King, they all followed this ancient story structure. The scholar Joseph Campbell gave it a name, the monomyth. It's this timeless, universal blueprint for telling a great story that we just keep coming back to.
Okay, to really see how this works in practice, let's put a modern masterpiece under the microscope. The 2018 film Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. It feels so incredibly fresh and original, right? But its genius is all in the way it brings together so many existing ideas.
So first, layer one. The film basically absorbed the entire visual language of printed comic books. You've got panels, sound effects popping up on screen, and it even copies the look of the physical printing process, with things like Ben-Day dots and those slightly misaligned colors. The medium itself becomes part of the message.
Okay, layer two. They then blended a ton of different animation techniques from across history. They pull from classic 2D animation using a cool trick called animating on the twos to get that snappy, distinct movement, and then they fuse it with the most advanced 3D computer animation out there.
And for the final layer, they started pulling in techniques from live-action movies. You can feel the influence of these roving, handheld-style cameras, you see dramatic time-lapses, and they even throw in these quick zooms that feel like they're straight out of a 1970s flick. It just adds another level of energy.
So you see what makes Spider-Verse feel so groundbreaking isn't that any single ingredient is brand new. You can't really point to one thing and say, that's never been done. No, its genius is in the combination. The way they bring all those existing influences together creates an experience that feels completely, utterly original.
Now, this way of creating, it's not just for art. It has shaped the very foundations of our worldviews for thousands of years. And to see that, we've got to go way, way back to the ancient world. If you look at the creation story in the book of Genesis, it shares some structural DNA with a much older Babylonian epic called the Enuma Elish. Both start with a kind of watery chaos, and both have a creator god separating the heavens and the earth. Anyone hearing the Genesis story back then would have instantly recognized the pattern. But, and this is everything, The biblical writer took that familiar story structure and used it to make a radical new point. They took this old narrative about violent, warring gods creating humans to be their slaves, and they transformed it. It became a story about a single, supreme God creating an orderly, good world and placing humanity right at the top as its stewards.
So, what is all this, from a, quote, Picasso never even said, all the way to ancient creation myths? What does it tell us about what it really means to be creative?
It tells us that creation is never, ever a solo act. It's always an act of participation. That spark of genius doesn't just appear in a vacuum, it's shared, passed down, and built upon across generations.
This is exactly why we're so drawn to stories that build on things we already know. Just look at this. In a recent 10-year period, a staggering 92% of the biggest movies were sequels, remakes, or adaptations. We have an almost endless appetite for familiar tales told in new ways.
So, true originality, in the end, isn't about making something from nothing. It's about how you add your own voice to this grand, continuous conversation, a conversation that stretches across all of human history and connects us to our most ancient ancestors. Thank you for watching The Explainer.